So, you really think she can handle this? The words rolled through the boardroom like a wave of skepticism, bouncing off the polished mahogany table and mirrored walls, laughter trickling from the lips of investors who leaned back in their leather chairs with arms crossed and coffee cups poised, the sunlight from the floor-to-ceiling windows catching the gold trim on their watches, glinting like tiny reminders of power. Emily Carter stepped into the room, her black blazer crisp, her laptop bag slung over one shoulder, heels clicking softly against the marble floor as the chatter subsided to murmurs, eyes turning, some curious, some condescending. She paused at the doorway, scanning the faces of men who towered over her in stature and assumed authority, the air thick with anticipation and unspoken judgment. Papers shuffled, a pen tapped impatiently, and one investor leaned forward, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, whispering, "She's just a kid, she doesn't know the first thing about running a company." Emily inhaled, the faint scent of polished wood and espresso mingling with the sterile air conditioning, her gaze steady, unflinching, as she walked toward the center of the room, placing her bag gently on the side table and setting her laptop open, the screen casting a soft glow across her determined features. The laughter subsided slightly as she spoke, calm yet firm. "Good morning, everyone. I've reviewed the projections and noticed a potential flaw in the merger calculations that could impact our liquidity within 90 days if left unaddressed." Heads tilted, eyebrows furrowed, a few chuckles escaped, and someone muttered under his breath, "She really said 90 days, like she knows what she's talking about." Emily continued, outlining the risk with concise slides, the soft clicking of the remote the only sound accompanying her voice as she highlighted discrepancies, each investor's gaze now flickering between disbelief and attention, the room tense, almost vibrating with anticipation as she gestured to a chart projecting cash flow and potential losses, the fluorescent lights above casting sharp shadows that emphasized the crisp lines of her suit, the calculated precision of her movements, and the resolute expression on her face. A senior investor leaned back, shaking his head slowly, lips pressed together, eyes narrowing, and asked, "And you're confident this is accurate?" Emily nodded once, unwavering, her voice steady, "Yes, I've cross-referenced all historical data and included market volatility factors. The solution I propose mitigates the risk entirely." Silence fell, broken only by the distant hum of the air vents and the ticking of the wall clock, tension lingering like a held breath, the energy in the room shifting imperceptibly as the first hints of respect began to glimmer in the eyes that had mocked her moments before, the camera-like focus lingering on her poised hands as they rested lightly on the table, and the subtle rise and fall of her chest as she breathed steadily, every movement deliberate, calculated, the embodiment of composure and intelligence standing against the tide of doubt, the laughter now stilled, replaced by the sharp edge of curiosity, the boardroom frozen, waiting, and Emily's presence alone commanding attention. A young black CEO challenging the weight of expectation and the skeptical gazes of those who underestimated her. Emily Carter adjusted the laptop screen, her fingers hovering above the keyboard as she scanned the data one more time, the glow illuminating her focused expression against the backdrop of the high-rise conference room, the city skyline stretching endlessly beyond the glass walls. She recalled the early mornings spent in her small apartment, poring over spreadsheets and financial reports while the sunlight barely crept through the narrow blinds, the scent of brewed coffee lingering in the air, a reminder of the countless hours she dedicated to understanding every nuance of the market, the acquisitions, and the projections that most considered too complex for someone her age. Her eyes traced the lines of figures, noting anomalies in investor behavior and subtle patterns in the cash flow that hinted at potential pitfalls, each discovery reinforcing the strategy she had rehearsed, the speech she had crafted to convey authority without arrogance, confidence without confrontation. The air in the boardroom remained taut, the investors leaning forward slightly, their murmurs subdued but present, the soft tap of a pen against the polished table breaking the silence intermittently, a mechanical rhythm to the tension that pulsed through the space. Emily straightened, drawing a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the weight of expectation pressing against her shoulders yet refusing to bend, her posture poised and controlled, every motion measured as she adjusted her notes and prepared to guide the conversation. She began outlining the structural weaknesses in the proposed plan, her voice clear and steady, articulating each step with precision, referencing historical data and market indicators with authority, weaving a narrative that revealed both the risk and the solution, each statement designed to illuminate the path forward while subtly demonstrating her mastery of the subject. The investors shifted in their seats, some exchanging glances, eyebrows raising in cautious intrigue, a faint murmur rippling across the room as attention sharpened, the skepticism that had filled the air now tinged with curiosity. Emily's eyes met theirs, unwavering, scanning the room as if reading each mind in turn, calibrating her words and pauses to maintain engagement, to ensure understanding without condescension. She presented a visual chart, colors and lines mapping the potential outcomes, each detail precise, each annotation deliberate, the soft hum of the projector providing a steady backdrop to her explanations. As she spoke, she noticed subtle changes, heads tilted, pens paused, the rhythm of breath synchronized in shared focus, the room no longer a sea of mockery but a stage of cautious consideration, the laughter and whispered doubts replaced by a charged silence. Emily felt a quiet satisfaction, not from dominating the conversation, but from guiding it, from demonstrating competence in a space that had doubted her from the outset. She paused briefly, letting the implications of her analysis sink in, the room absorbing the significance, the tension lingering like a held breath, every investor weighing her insight against their assumptions, every glance acknowledging, perhaps silently, the depth of understanding she brought to the table. In that moment, the room seemed to expand and contract with the weight of possibility, the city lights outside reflecting against the glass and mingling with the resolve that radiated from her, the young black CEO who had transformed skepticism into focus, who had quietly shifted the balance of authority with nothing more than preparation, intellect, and unwavering composure, standing poised between expectation and realization, the subtle power of knowledge and clarity radiating through her presence, commanding attention without force, earning respect without declaration, a testament to dedication, foresight, and the quiet but undeniable force of expertise. The investors leaned forward slightly, pens paused midair, some clearing throats as their eyes darted from chart to chart, the soft hum of the air conditioning punctuating the thick silence that had fallen over the room. Emily Carter stood poised at the head of the table, her heels tapping softly against the polished marble floor as she gestured toward the projected slide with a measured hand, the soft glow from the laptop casting a steady light across her composed face. She began walking the group through her proposed adjustments, explaining the alternative allocation strategy with clarity, referencing historical trends and comparative market performance, every word carefully chosen to convey expertise without arrogance. Her voice resonated evenly, a calm authority that contrasted with the earlier laughter and whispers, drawing attention as the investors tracked each point, their initial smirks replaced by subtle nods and furrowed brows. She moved closer to the projection screen, highlighting specific figures and their potential impact, the crisp sound of her finger tapping the laser pointer punctuating her statements, a rhythmic underscore to the intensity of analysis. Papers rustled gently as one investor leaned back, crossing his arms, eyes narrowing as he considered the implications, the room holding its collective breath as he digested the information, the subtle click of a pen against a folder echoing in the silence like a metronome marking each second of scrutiny. Emily's gaze swept across the room, meeting each pair of eyes with quiet confidence, allowing them space to reconcile their assumptions with the evidence she presented, her presence commanding attention not through force but through the precision and credibility of her insight. The sunlight shifted through the windows, casting diagonal streaks across the polished wood and glass surfaces, accentuating the serious lines of her posture and the sharp clarity of her analysis, each shadow moving slowly as if the room itself was adjusting to the shift in perception, the hum of the city outside barely noticeable beneath the concentrated energy inside. A senior investor leaned forward, voice measured, asking a pointed question about risk mitigation strategies for unforeseen market shifts, and Emily responded without hesitation, detailing contingency plans, demonstrating her command over the data and scenarios, her explanation weaving together numbers, probabilities, and strategic insight seamlessly. The room remained attentive, some exchanging discreet glances, the earlier laughter now replaced with quiet acknowledgement of her capability, a transformation subtle yet tangible, as if the collective perception of authority and experience was being rewritten in real time. Each slide she advanced reinforced the logic of her proposal, the layout clean, annotations precise, the visual flow supporting her verbal argument, and the investors adjusted in their seats, leaning in to follow each development, the air thick with concentration and the understated tension of those realizing that their assumptions might have been misplaced. Emily paused, hands lightly resting on the laptop, letting the information resonate, allowing the silent room to absorb the full scope of her strategic insight, her breathing steady, controlled, reflecting the calm confidence of someone who had prepared meticulously, who understood the stakes fully, and who possessed the clarity to guide others through uncertainty with measured authority. The subtle shift in posture and attention among the investors indicated the beginning of change, a silent acknowledgement of respect forming not through forceful assertion but through demonstrated expertise, poise, and the quiet power of unwavering preparation. Emily took a steadying breath, letting her calm presence settle over the room as she clicked to the next slide, revealing a series of charts detailing the projected outcomes of her proposed adjustments, each bar and line precisely labeled, the colors contrasting in a way that highlighted risks and opportunities with clarity. The investors shifted, some leaning closer, others tapping pens against the table subconsciously, the quiet hum of the building settling around them like a subtle underscore to the intensity in the air. She moved slowly along the front of the room, her posture upright, shoulders back, hands gesturing naturally to emphasize points, voice modulated to balance authority and clarity, each word deliberate, designed to guide comprehension and spark reflection rather than confrontation. She outlined contingency strategies, detailing how minor reallocations and operational adjustments could prevent financial bottlenecks, the precision of her analysis reflected in the confident pacing of her explanations, the room absorbing each detail, the earlier mirth and doubt replaced by measured attention. The sunlight shifted, streaking across the polished marble and glass surfaces, casting a warm glow that accentuated the seriousness of the discussion, the reflective surfaces bouncing the light in subtle patterns that seemed to mark the passage of insight through the room. Emily paused briefly at the midpoint, scanning the faces before her, noting subtle changes in expression, slight nods, furrowed brows relaxing, the gentle tightening of hands around notebooks as comprehension and respect grew, the room responding to competence rather than command. She continued, articulating the strategic benefits of her solution, referencing analogous scenarios from industry precedents, weaving a narrative that combined numbers and context seamlessly, creating a mental map for the investors to visualize the outcome, each sentence reinforcing her credibility and foresight. The air felt denser, charged with the quiet realization that the assumptions they had carried into the room were being challenged constructively, that their initial laughter and doubt were giving way to measured consideration, a shift subtle yet undeniable, the room collectively leaning into the clarity she presented, curiosity now tempered with cautious respect. Her movements were precise yet fluid, stepping from one side of the boardroom to the other, the soft click of her heels on the marble floor marking the rhythm of her presentation, the folds of her blazer reflecting the light, accentuating her composed and meticulous presence, a visual counterpart to the analytical rigor she conveyed verbally. Every chart, annotation, and explanation contributed to a growing understanding, the room settling into an attentive focus, whispers replaced by reflective glances, the dynamic of power subtly shifting as competence began to outweigh preconceptions, the young black CEO asserting authority through expertise, preparation, and unwavering poise. As she concluded the segment, her hand hovered over the laptop, allowing a moment of quiet for the implications to sink in, the room absorbing the full scope of the insight she had presented, the tension lingering but now intertwined with acknowledgement, a subtle yet significant transformation taking root in the collective consciousness of the investors, Emily's presence and performance guiding the board from doubt toward recognition with quiet, unassailable confidence. The senior investor straightened in his chair, clearing his throat as a subtle ripple of murmurs passed across the room, the tension now palpable as skepticism began to meet reluctant curiosity, the air conditioning humming quietly as though it were holding its breath along with everyone present. Emily Carter remained poised at the front, her gaze steady, scanning the reactions of each person, noting the flicker of hesitation, the micro-expressions that revealed doubt giving way to interest, her hands lightly resting on the laptop, fingertips brushing the edge, the glow of the screen highlighting the sharp focus in her eyes. One of the younger investors shifted, eyebrows furrowing, lips pressing together as he whispered softly to his colleague, "She may actually be right," the words almost lost beneath the soft shuffle of papers and the distant tick of a wall clock. Emily continued, methodically breaking down the scenario, demonstrating how small adjustments in cash flow allocation could mitigate risk while maintaining projected growth, her voice clear and deliberate, each phrase designed to reinforce credibility and highlight the practical feasibility of her plan without ever sounding condescending. The investors leaned in, some unconsciously mirroring her posture, their earlier smiles and smirks replaced by attentive concentration, the subtle tightening of grips around pens, the tilt of heads, and the faint nods all signifying a gradual shift in perception, a transition from dismissiveness to engaged consideration. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off the polished surfaces, casting soft shadows that accentuated the changing dynamic in the room. The interplay of light and space mirroring the subtle recalibration of authority and respect taking place as Emily walked slowly to the side, pointing to specific anomalies, drawing lines across charts, her movements fluid yet precise, the rhythm of her speech punctuated by thoughtful pauses that allowed each point to sink in, each concept to resonate with the audience. A more skeptical voice broke the silence, questioning the long-term sustainability of her adjustments, and Emily met it calmly, presenting a step-by-step plan, citing industry case studies and historical analogs, demonstrating foresight and strategic depth, the room hanging on each word, the collective energy shifting toward acknowledgement of her expertise. The investors exchanged glances, some whispering quietly to one another, subtle gestures betraying the growing recognition that the analysis was sound, the risk assessed with meticulous care, the path forward both practical and innovative, all under the steady guidance of Emily's confident presentation. The atmosphere, once charged with doubt and amusement, now carried a palpable respect, the dynamic subtly altered, the balance of power redefined not through confrontation but through competence, clarity, and unyielding composure. As she concluded this portion of the presentation, Emily allowed a brief pause, letting the room absorb the implications, the silent acknowledgement in their eyes a testament to the quiet authority she commanded. The transformation complete not with fanfare but with the unspoken recognition of her insight, strategy, and the undeniable impact of preparation and intellect on those who had underestimated her. Emily stepped back from the projection, allowing a quiet moment to settle over the room, the soft glow from the charts reflecting across her composed features as she observed the investors processing the information she had presented. The tension in the air was palpable yet subtle, a mixture of anticipation and contemplation, the hum of the ventilation system providing a gentle, consistent background that seemed to mark the passage of thought. She adjusted the stack of notes at her side, the edges crisp, the neatly printed tables aligned perfectly, a testament to the preparation and attention to detail that had carried her through countless hours of analysis in the early mornings and late nights, the aroma of brewed coffee still lingering faintly in memory as she recalled her solitary work in a small apartment with the sunlight barely reaching the window sill. Her gaze swept across the room, catching subtle shifts in posture, the soft straightening of backs, the careful placement of pens on leather-bound notebooks, slight tilts of heads that betrayed concentration, and the almost imperceptible narrowing of eyes as comprehension began to replace doubt. A senior investor leaned slightly forward, exhaling softly, the fingers of one hand drumming lightly against the polished table surface, and Emily maintained her calm stance, letting the silence stretch long enough for the weight of her analysis to resonate without interruption, her measured presence guiding the room toward clarity. The city skyline beyond the glass walls stretched endlessly, the afternoon light casting long shadows across the floor, illuminating dust motes drifting lazily in the sunbeams, each particle seeming to reflect the gravity of the moment, the quiet intensity of focus converging on her poised figure at the center. She slowly moved along the edge of the conference table, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor in a steady rhythm that complemented the deliberate pacing of her explanation, the folds of her blazer catching the light with every slight movement, enhancing the sense of careful control and meticulous attention she exuded. Emily spoke gently, outlining subtle nuances in the projections that had previously gone unnoticed, her voice modulated to emphasize key points, the soft cadence drawing the room into alignment with her thought process. Each listener attuned to the flow of logic and reason, the previously skeptical expressions giving way to thoughtful consideration and quiet reflection. The ambient sounds of shifting chairs, the faint scribble of notes being taken, and the low hum of technology in the background created a delicate texture, framing the shift in energy that had occurred over the past minutes, the room slowly transitioning from one of initial mockery to one of attentive respect. She paused once more, letting the charts and data speak for themselves, her eyes scanning each individual, noting the subtle nods, the thoughtful furrow of brows, the slight lean toward the presentation, and the shared, almost imperceptible acknowledgement of understanding. The light continued to change, reflecting softly across the polished surfaces, the glass and wood interplay casting reflective patterns that mirrored the transformation of perception taking place, the subtle recalibration of authority within the room becoming tangible in posture, in gaze, and in the gentle exhalations of those who had once doubted her capabilities. In this suspended moment, Emily embodied composure, expertise, and quiet command, her presence alone anchoring the room, allowing the investors to absorb, reflect, and acknowledge the insight, strategy, and meticulous preparation that defined her leadership, creating an atmosphere charged with focused attention and the slow but undeniable emergence of respect. The room held a hushed stillness, the tension lingering like a fine mist over the polished surfaces as the investors slowly processed the weight of Emily Carter's analysis, their initial skepticism giving way to a dawning realization that every detail she had presented aligned perfectly with the complex data sets and market indicators, her voice and presence now resonating with undeniable authority. Heads that had tilted in doubt now straightened in attentiveness, pens resting lightly against open notebooks as eyes tracked the points she had meticulously outlined, the faint creak of chairs shifting marking subtle gestures of reconsideration, the soft tick of the wall clock measuring the seconds as comprehension and respect began to take root. Emily's gaze swept over the room, noting micro-expressions and slight nods, each subtle acknowledgement reinforcing the transformation of the boardroom dynamic, the atmosphere shifting from one of condescension and doubt to careful, engaged consideration, the energy in the space bending quietly toward acceptance. One of the senior investors leaned forward, fingers laced together, voice measured and controlled. "Emily, we should have reviewed this before dismissing the plan. Your projections are sound and your mitigation strategy is comprehensive." The words carried weight, breaking the fragile silence, and Emily remained composed, nodding slightly, her expression calm and confident as the room absorbed the significance of the statement, the sunlight streaming through the windows casting long, soft shadows across the polished floors and highlighting the precise, deliberate gestures of her hands as she adjusted the documents before her. A few younger investors exchanged glances, a silent conversation in their eyes, a shared acknowledgement of the accuracy and foresight she had demonstrated, the subtle shift in posture and facial expressions signaling the beginning of a collective reassessment, their laughter and whispered doubts from earlier replaced by concentrated attention and quiet reflection. Emily moved to the side, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor, the glow of her laptop illuminating her poised form, the subtle rise and fall of her chest in measured breaths a testament to the control she maintained over both her presentation and the energy of the room. She allowed the silence to stretch just long enough for the impact of her insights to resonate fully, the investors now considering the implications of their earlier assumptions and the prudence of her recommendations, the air thick with acknowledgement and the understated gravity of recognition forming unspoken consensus. Light shifted gradually across the table, reflecting off leather and glass, marking the transition of perception in the room, and as Emily observed the subtle transformations, a quiet satisfaction passed through her, not from domination but from guiding others to understanding through clarity, competence, and unwavering composure, the young black CEO standing resolute as the room absorbed, acknowledged, and slowly adjusted to the undeniable truth of her vision, the once skeptical board now aligned with insight and respect that had been earned through intellect and presence alone. As the room began to exhale collectively, a quiet recognition settled over the investors, their earlier skepticism now transformed into a tempered respect that lingered in the subtle straightening of spines, the soft nods, and the careful, deliberate gestures that punctuated the otherwise still atmosphere. Emily Carter remained poised at the front, her hands lightly resting on the laptop, her posture calm yet commanding, every movement measured, conveying authority without arrogance, competence without force, the gentle glow of the screen illuminating her steady gaze as she observed the gradual acknowledgement of her insights. One of the senior investors, eyes bright with a dawning understanding, leaned forward and spoke with a tone both tentative and sincere. "Emily, your analysis has not only identified the gaps we overlooked but has also provided a clear path forward that none of us anticipated, and for that, we are grateful." The words echoed softly through the room, mingling with the subtle hum of the ventilation system, as Emily allowed herself a brief, contained nod, acknowledging the respect now quietly afforded to her, her composed demeanor never wavering as she maintained her connection to the charts and data that had guided her presentation. Across the table, the younger investors exchanged glances, some with widened eyes, others with thoughtful frowns, the silent conversation of recognition playing out through body language, a shared understanding of the skill, preparation, and insight that had transformed the dynamics of the meeting. Emily spoke again, her voice gentle yet precise, elaborating briefly on implementation steps, emphasizing collaboration and strategic oversight, her words measured to encourage engagement while reinforcing the validity of her perspective, the room absorbing each statement with careful consideration, the subtle rhythm of the discussion underscoring the shift from doubt to trust, from hesitation to acknowledgement. The light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows shifted as the sun edged lower, casting long, warm shadows across the polished marble floors, highlighting the contours of the table, the reflective surfaces of glass and metal, and the composed figure of Emily at the head of the room, a visual representation of the clarity and certainty she had brought to the discussion. The soft scrape of chairs as one investor shifted slightly, the careful placement of pens, the subtle exhalation of others all contributed to the quiet symphony of acknowledgement, the once dismissive atmosphere replaced by one of focused attention and careful consideration. Emily allowed a brief pause, her eyes scanning each individual, noting the subtle changes in expression, the micro-gestures of respect and recognition, the quiet transformation of energy in the room, a palpable shift in the balance of authority that had been maintained without confrontation, simply through competence, clarity, and unwavering composure. As she gathered her notes and closed the laptop gently, the room remained still for a moment longer, the air charged with the understated realization of her insight, the meticulous preparation and thoughtful guidance having quietly reshaped perception, authority, and mutual respect, leaving a lasting impression of both her professional acumen and the quiet power of knowledge executed with grace and confidence. The investor's acknowledgement unspoken yet unmistakable, the atmosphere transformed. From skepticism to validation through the subtle but undeniable force of expertise. Emily Carter stepped out of the boardroom into the wide corridor, the soft echo of her heels on the polished marble following her like a quiet applause, the city skyline stretching endlessly through the glass walls, bathed in the warm glow of late afternoon sun. She allowed herself a small, controlled exhale, the tension of the meeting slowly dissolving as she walked past the sleek conference tables and scattered documents, the subtle reflections on glass and steel catching her eye as reminders of the precision and clarity that had guided every moment of her presentation. Her hands adjusted the strap of her laptop bag, the faint weight a comforting reminder of preparation and mastery, each step measured, deliberate, reinforcing the poise she carried effortlessly through the building. The soft hum of the air conditioning mingled with the distant murmur of office activity, creating a rhythmic backdrop to her measured pace, the quiet interlude after hours of focused engagement allowing her a moment of reflection on the strategic clarity and calm influence she had exerted on the investors. She paused briefly by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the bustling streets below, the city alive with movement and possibility, the late sun casting long, golden streaks across the streets, reflecting off cars, windows, and pedestrians, a tapestry of energy that mirrored the transformation she had witnessed inside the room. Emily allowed herself a subtle, satisfied smile, acknowledging the quiet respect that had grown in the investors' expressions, the once dismissive attitudes now tempered with recognition of competence and insight, a shift that required no words, only presence, preparation, and undeniable clarity of thought. She continued walking, the soft rhythm of her heels marking the passage of a day that had begun with skepticism and laughter and now concluded with acknowledgement and a renewed sense of possibility. The corridor stretching ahead like an invitation to future endeavors, each door she passed a reminder of challenges met and expectations recalibrated. The gentle play of light and shadow followed her steps, highlighting her composed silhouette against the polished floor. The careful alignment of her blazer and the subtle sway of her hair reflecting the grace and control with which she navigated every aspect of her role. As she reached the elevator, the soft chime announced her arrival, the doors opening smoothly to reveal the empty car bathed